and we just went over that. So we have our main aspects, what we're going to go through. So we're looking at that. We're going to go through these peak times, and they're measured out here. Okay, I'm not going to stay. I got to really, I can talk the story I can do the story just using this because it has all the specific dates and that. But that gives us the timing. This is the calendar. But then when this was important. Remember when we did the transits, I said you need to start a history spreadsheet, and you have, I think I sent you all a blank calendar form which had each year and a month for each year. Like if you look on the left-hand side, you see 1965, then April, May, June, July. But I think I gave you on this January for each month, and you're supposed to see where you were living, what was going on, were you in a relationship, where you're working, in a relationship, not a relationship. You're supposed to start filling in your history. You could do it for your big events, and then you have to fill in between. So by the time you finish your transits, you should have recaptured a great amount of your life and remembered and put it in time perspective what's going on. And as you did that, you were supposed to have filled in your history spreadsheet. So this is my history spreadsheet, and I've recaptured most of, like, it's a good thing I did because I wouldn't remember where everything is, like, to do this class. So I have my history spreadsheet with the dates and what happened at those dates. And so I have things, sometimes there's a second thing that happens, sometimes there's a third tab here. That's why I did it in a spreadsheet, because you keep adding things if you need to. So it would go over further. So getting the spreadsheet or getting your history, having that is really useful here, because it's hard to, what was I doing then, what's happening then, and trying to remember in the moment. It's much more vague. It's like having glasses and walking around without them. You don't see as quite as clearly. When you have everything exactly spelled out, you begin to see it, and you begin to see things within that too. It makes connections and puts more purpose in the sequences that are going on in your life. So this is one of the things you should have, and if you don't, you got work to do tonight or next couple of days to try and get something together that can work like this. Okay, because you need to take your spreadsheet. That's one of the pieces of it. So this history thing, it's so useful, and you need to get there to recapture your memory and your experience, so you can. The more you're able to do that, the more you can use that as wisdom to go forward into the future. And as the progressed sun's moving along by degree, it's sucking up and gaining experience of each degree. Anything in that degree it wants to know about, it wants to run into, it's going to run into, it's going to get some experience related to that. And they're going to be different in each degree as it goes along through the zodiac. So then, the printout I gave you, I sent you all a printout. This is one not colored, but you would have this. You would have it in your, I sent it to you as PDF files. I did it for a special reason. You have, now those of you who are watching this and it's past the date of doing it, if you're trying to get these, I'm going to set up something where you can order this through the www.iastrostore.com, and there'll be a place where you can order your progressed printouts, the progressed printouts with transits, with pentans and transits on it, with pentans and hexagrams. So this has the dates of everything and puts them in across your life. And you can do it in, this is done for 10 minutes of degree intervals, and the most accurate is done for 1 minute. 1 minute 40-second degree intervals. So the aspects are much further apart, but you get more detail. This was enough to work with. So you take this and you have it as a PDF file. Since you have it as a PDF file, you can go up to the top and you can save as, and you hit the save as, and you're saving it, like you go under file, you hit the save as, and you save it as a text file. Okay, get all this information, so you're going to lose the bolds and everything as you put in a text file, but when you save it as a text file, it comes out something like this. You have the data on top, but it still puts every event dated in order with the hexagram, with the degree, with the pentan, hexagram, line number, pentan, sub-pentan, hexagram, line number, pentan, sub-hexagram, and line number. And so each line is one of the events of what's happening when it enters that line, when it enters that pentan, when it changes pentan, when it changes. So all these things are everything on those sheets is recorded here. So this is a text file. So what I do, once I get the text file, I change it. I save it again as a Microsoft Word file, so you can put formatting in and carry it. But this allows us, once you have it as a text file or as a micro, and change it to, you put it to text first, because that's how the PowerPoint works. You're able to save it as a text. And then once you have it as a text, you can then start dividing, adding spaces. Boom. Like I just added a few spaces here to show you can add spaces between each one. Then you can write other things of what's happening in between here at these times in these areas. So once you do that, you save the copy as a micro. When you're working, you pick it up in Word or something, or in a word processing file, and then you can save it in that format, and then you can, everything you add, you can bold things, it will stand out much better. Okay, so this is our last level of prep. It's a lot of material, but you can work with it without doing this, but you don't get the same amount, you don't get the same depth. So I'm just encouraging you to make the effort, take time, organize it, so you have it really, once you do this, you use it again and again, you come into this all across your life and you have these things in depth. So make it, so the next stage that I did is I took my calendar, my spreadsheet, and I took each item in the spreadsheet, but I saved the spreadsheet as a text file. So I had each thing as a text file. And then I copied line by line out of my history and put it in between the printout for the chart, for the progressions. So here we have, you know, March 12th, 66, 4 o'clock. It has the Scorpio, Sag, Pentan, Gemini, and then I was spending end of first year university. I was writing poetry. I started writing poetry and things like that. So I started putting things in across this whole time. If you really want to do it for across your life, it's a lot of work. So I just took this one point to show it to you, because it's very dramatic times in my life, and it will show the themes and the phases that are going on. And then the rest is I gotta tell you my story in a, it's not stuff I often talk about anymore, but that's so long ago. But they were formative times in my life. Not that I suggest it's the example that anybody else should live by, but but this is how I've organized it. I just took the dates, took my spreadsheet with the data, or I made a text file from it. I copied a certain section, I put it in where it's supposed to be, just where it's supposed to be. Then I have the event, the progressed event, what's happening in my life, and I have them all set up in chronological order across my lifetime. So it's these 3 or 4 pages that we're gonna work with. This is what I expect you to do. It's work. In astrology, like I grew up before computers, and all this stuff had to be hand done and hand drawn out. So I got used to doing that. Now with computers, you can get the calculations. I used to have to hand calculate all these calculations. So yeah, it's a bit nerdy, it's a little out there, but I was obsessive and I had to know. That's how it worked, how it used to be. Now you just push buttons, get it, but you can get the information, but you don't know how to tap it, how to make it deeper, how to make it more personal, how to get deeper into it. So, okay, then I thought, well, if I'm going to do this and I'm going to make a presentation, I may as well set it up a bit more, make it look nice and set it up a little bit more pizzazz. So this is where we're going to start with my understanding my progressions. Okay, so let's make this a bit bigger, and we'll just start. We'll do a piece of it at a time so it's big enough for you to read. Okay. Whoa. It's primal therapy for me going over this, much less talking to it about people. My family split up. I took off. I was halfway, a couple of years university, and I took off. And I left on my own to write poetry and travel and be the hippie. And so really, I was more like beatnik. I was just want to read poetry, travel, just wander, get experiences, because anything is better than staying where I was. Everything was getting negative, seemingly, for me in Montreal. The family was breaking up, and I knew people, but I didn't really have good friends. So I was just haunted and driven to go away. So this was March 13, 65. Progressed Sun. It's in Scorpio in my 3rd house. You hear the Scorpio, Sag, Gemini phase. Okay, this is, I ended my first year of university. and I started writing poetry. That was the big theme, and poetry became a big thing for a long time for me, or for quite a while for me, but I really was deeply into trying to write, but that was my centering, was the poetry. But I was taking chemistry math at university, but I became more interested in the poetry. So that was a big shift. And I think with this came an interest in existentialist philosophy, in again, the beatnik poetry, but was thinking differently and looking at things differently. So you had the Scorpio with a higher understanding, looking at other ways of learning, other teachers, other writings, and trying to write myself. And looking for that in my own personal world, everything was blocked off, everybody was locked in positions that it wasn't happening. Like, so it was like, through the music coming out at that time, it was really changing me too. And it started to, so that summer, it's shifted. It still stayed in the same theme. These printouts work by 10 minutes of a degree, so it's still in the same pentence. I took 2 months after university. I worked at a construction. Really, I played at the construction, and the guys there were all these big guys, and I was a tiny guy. I was like, whew. Well, by that time, well, I was probably about my height then, but I was with 5'7", 5'8". But they had me out working on, in the middle of a concrete floor, lifting this big metal thing, the vibrator that's having the concrete, and really they set a big man doing that, but they want to try to get me to quit, you know. But they were like, seeing if I could do it. I'm too stubborn to not do it, so I would go in and do it. And then that was, yeah, there was a few things like that. So, but it lasted about a month and a half. Then I got a few weeks, and then I got another job, tearing apart a basement, hacking it apart, and making it, and getting rid of the concrete and shoving it out of a small 3-foot basement, making it to a 6-foot basement. But that was like a first job, but I made good money from it. Then I decided I worked for that 2 months. By June, I couldn't take it anymore in the family. So then I decided I'd leave. It's the Gemini Penten with the Sagittarius. It was like the sense of adventure was, I was doing the hard work to get the sense of adventure. But in this, it's a different theme than just going to school, being home, going to school. This is like things I'm doing on my own. In that summer, still Scorpio, Sag, Gemini phase. This whole section is the Scorpio, Gemini. I just put a heading onto it for the Penten. I threw a picture of what I looked like when I was in university. And okay, I'm trying not to look at it too much. But anyways, then I left. In July, I just said, that's it. I left. I took a bus to Calgary. I hitchhiked through the Rockies, Kelowna, Vancouver. I got to the West Coast, and there's the Bunkhouse, which was a folk music place there. And I was hanging around there. And I was working a bit there. And I remember meeting Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee there, and a few other musicians. But he had inspired me a lot. And they showed me how to play a Jew's harp, and I learned how to play that. And so, like, it was influence, but most of this was traveling down to San Francisco, down to North Beach, the folk music scene in San Francisco. I was following that, and Kerouac and Ginsberg, and where they were reading and stuff. And in California, it was the first time I took grass. I was on the street by myself. I met this guy, Deaf Eddie. He's deaf, he couldn't hear, and there was another lady that was there, Linda, and so we kind of were sitting talking, hanging out, and then he said, you want to smoke some grass? And well, he signaled, then Linda knew him, so she explained, then we went off, and it was the first time I ever smoked grass. But I spent 3 weeks in San Francisco, and this was really, and then through August, I went from San Francisco down to LA and Venice Beach, and then I went over across the desert to Phoenix up. So all this I've been traveling on my own. And I went to Phoenix, my dad was there, and I got him to drive back with me, and we went back up to Calgary and back to Toronto and Montreal. So this was all this traveling phase really suited the Scorpio Sag Gemini. On top of that, my dad is a Gemini, and he filled in this phase added the extra Gemini element inside of this.